Well, as I think most people are now aware, we've been looking at trying to create these critical mineral supply chains for over 25 years now. We first acquired our lithium asset at Separation Rapids, the Big Whopper, as it was referred to earlier by Minister Peary, back in 1996, 97. And it looks like, maybe I was a bit early then, but it looks like our time has finally come. And the issue then, what inspired me to get interested in it was, as Minister mentioned earlier, gold prices collapsed then, and you had the Bre-X scandal that made a junior company very difficult to raise capital if you want to do gold exploration. So I thought I should look at something else. And that had been a new discovery that had just been made by a geologist working for the OGS. Fred Breaks was his name. And prospectors staked it, and I decided that's a pretty interesting opportunity to do something different that's not gold. But maybe I was a bit early, but our time has come. So I've been in this business since 1995, and being a small cap company, we've been around for a while, accessing capital through the equity markets. And one of the things I learned early on was that if you're going to produce materials for clean technology, the end users often audit their supply chains back to the source of them to make sure they're produced in sustainable ways. So that's what inspired us over 10 years ago to start implementing basic principles of sustainability as part of our overall business model. And we've been producing an annual GRI compliant sustainability report for over 10 years now. And we just got an ESG risk rating from Sustainalytics Morningstar there last year, and that's helped introduce our story and get more interest from the growing ESG investment community out there. One reason we're called Avalon Advanced Materials is we're very diversified now. I learned early on that it's all about having the right product at the right time when new technology creates new demand for one of these non-traditional commodities. And I saw the future with rare earths back 15 years ago, and we almost got our rare earths supply chain started, but we had a final feasibility study done on our Nechalacho project in Northwest Territories, so basically we had the demand, but I think China saw us coming, and we couldn't get the ball over the line. So they don't want any competition then. So we've got a diversified asset base, so we have exposure to a broad range of different critical minerals. And I'm trying to educate people more and more now on how this is quite a different business from traditional mining of exchange-traded commodities, in that it's more like a manufacturing business, in that it's all about how you process it to meet the needs of the end user that would have an interest in it and make the derivative product to meet their specifications. So it's time for the regulations to get updated to recognize some of these fundamental differences in how the approach you have to take, because it's unlike traditional mining. It's not about tons and grade. It's about designing the process and the product, and then you scale your operation based on the market demand, not the size of the resource. So it's very different in that regard. And therefore, bulk sampling is one of the first things you need to do that test work and make trial quantities of the product so the end users can test it and make sure it's going to work. But unfortunately, the regulations have typically blocked you from taking a bulk sample until you're at an advanced stage in the development. And I've also been a proponent on advocating for how historic closed mine sites and mine waste now need to be looked at as opportunities to extract value from the waste, because there's many examples of resources that were developed decades ago for one traditional commodity where the resource contained a whole lot of other elements that are sitting there on surface. You don't have to mine them, just reprocess the waste and clean up the mess while you do it. It's taking a while to get the regulators educated on that to accept it. They just see them as no-go zones and too risky. But I've been very pleased with all the developments here in Ontario that have basically created that critical minerals strategy. And a lot of the components of that strategy are things I've been advocating for many years now. And looks like maybe they're going to get it now to establish different ways to promote getting these new supply chains started here. And we want to definitely show how this is a really important opportunity for First Nations to take advantage of these critical mineral supply chains. So as I was saying, we've had this project for a long time now, and when we first acquired it, we realized that it had a rare mineral in it called petalite that has been in demand for a long time as a high purity specialty mineral, because it's a high purity lithium aluminum silicate that can be used directly to introduce lithium into the batch formulation for high strength glass ceramic products. And there's, at the time, there was demand for it in North America. Corning used petalite to invent Corningware cookware. But unfortunately, they exited that business just when we thought we were going to get going, and then couldn't get it started on that basis. But we knew it'd have another day, and actually, demand for petalite in glass ceramics is going higher and higher now too. There's lots of international companies that are interested in the product, and lots of innovation on new variants on this now. So that's another opportunity we have for us going forward. So here's where we're located, just north of Kenora, and we're in the traditional territory of the Wapsimaang Independent Nations at White Dog, and we've had a good relationship with the community there ever since we got started. First signed an MOU to collaborate with them back in 1999. And basically the messaging we get is, when are you going to get something started there? So hopefully that'll get started here pretty soon. So the mineralogy, as I mentioned earlier, is a little different from most of the lithium resources that are spodumene pegmatites, in that this one contains petalite and lepidolite, a lithium mica that's got that purplish color to it. So they're both ways that we can recover lithium and produce lithium battery materials from either one of them. And this is our land position. The original resource is over on the right-hand side on the part of the property that's a lease. But we added more land on to the northwest there, because it's basically the resource is in a belt that trends to the northwest, and we know there's more lithium pegmatites out there. In fact, we discovered a new one last year that we haven't drilled yet that looks really good, actually, in terms of being very coarse-grained and probably having more subzones of other minerals within it. But everyone wants to see the lithium battery materials supply chain established here now and into Ontario. So we have been looking at that for quite a while too. We first did a PEA on how to do that back in 2016. And it's basically something I realized is that for creating the midstream processing capacity, you want to put that facility in a central location so that it's not just going to be for one mining operation. It can serve the needs of other producers eventually. So if you're going to do that in Northwestern Ontario, Thunder Bay is a perfect location for it, because it's the transportation hub of the Northwest and has good proximity to all kinds of lithium pegmatites. They're not rare at all. There are hundreds of them in Northwestern Ontario of all different sizes. So if new producers find some that aren't that big, but there's a buyer of the concentrates for the refinery here in Thunder Bay, then they can develop it as a small quarry, use new processing technologies like dense media separation or sensor-based ore sorting to concentrate it and sell it and make a lot of money and not do any damage to the environment. And we're keen to work with Lakehead University on getting more education into the earth science program on how these new minerals are important to the technology and keep inspiring more research and ways to recover them efficiently and potentially new applications for them. So we've created a subsidiary called Avalon Lithium Inc. to be the refinery owner. And we did sign a letter of intent with an Indian company back in April because we've been looking for a partner for that because it is the most expensive part of getting the whole operation started. But it's kind of slow dealing with a major company in India on the other side of the world. So I'm not sure if that's where that's going to end up, but we're now starting to get a whole lot more interest from all the companies that you've been reading about in the news from Germany and elsewhere that are keen to take advantage of our resources here in Northwestern Ontario. So we're pretty confident that we'll be able to find other investing partners to support our aspirations on getting this refinery established and provide the initial offtake commitments too that are also an important aspect of the business. And we're also getting a lot of interest now from First Nations, including Fort William First Nation, and being an investing partner in the refinery. And hopefully that'll inspire more of the ones in the north, the Ring of Fire and elsewhere, where lots more lithium pegmatites to get involved in producing the concentrates for the refinery. In terms of the economics, they keep getting better and better. We first did that PEA in 2016, and at that time we assumed a price for lithium hydroxide of $11,000 a ton, but now it's like at least triple that. And if we use $20,000 a ton now, maybe as a long-term average, then the profitability is extremely good. As you can see, the numbers in red here are the ones that use that $20,000 a ton as the pricing for the product. So it's now a multi-billion-dollar asset. But the demand for this mineral in glass ceramics is growing too. So we want to take advantage of that actually as well. There's more and more demand, and there's a real shortage of supply of this high purity lithium mineral petalite. Most of it came from Zimbabwe, and now China controls all those resources there. So we've got one of the few in the world that of any size that China doesn't already control. So that's opening the door for us to create supply for the many end users out there that are looking for a new supply of this critical mineral. There's lots of innovation happening in that space now too. I see it as potentially replacing windshield glass in electric vehicles as part of the whole light weighting strategy for electric vehicles going forward. So the next steps moving forward here, we for the market for glass ceramics, the key next step has always been to process a bulk sample and be able to provide product samples to the end users so they can try it out, make sure it's going to meet their needs. We took that bulk sample last year, but there's still no facility in Canada that's equipped properly to do the processing for us on a sample that big. So we're now in the process of acquiring our own DMS plant, dense media separation, so we can do it ourselves and get that whole supply chain started. And in the meantime, we'll be securing the offtake agreements, and we want to get going on getting the lithium battery materials refinery established here in Thunder Bay. We've got a site picked out. We're now in the process of closing a deal to acquire it, and then we'll get going on the model for building it, and then finalize our feasibility study cost estimates, complete the environmental assessment work at the site, and then we'll get started in the short term with the byproducts for the well, the glass ceramic industry, but also be looking at all the other potential byproducts. Lithium pegmatites like this one, almost everything in the rock is potentially a saleable commodity. So you want to recover all those too and enhance the overall value of the asset. And then hopefully we'll be able to get the battery materials production started by 25, 26.